Hello there. We're going to be discussing Twin Peaks The Return, Episode 7, Part 7, There's a Body All Right. Before we get into that, I'm William. With me is...
Sean.
And if you've been following the videos, we've discussed all the episodes so far of Twin Peaks The Return. We did the first 4 episodes in one video, and then we did a video for Part 5 and Part 6. So now we're discussing Part 7. And the show in Part 6 and 7 is starting to get back in, or 5, 6, and 7 have started to get more into a groove of what I think the show is, or
what you expected it to be.
It gives a discernible feeling of a show. It's not just like vignettes of things happening where you don't know what it means. Like there's a glass box and there's all these other things. At least the past few episodes, there's been a little bit of narrative drive, and some answers have been given to stuff. Like we found out a few episodes ago what's happening with, or last episode about what's happening with Dr. Jacoby's shovels.
Yeah.
We found out, a few different things.
I mean, we finally saw Diane, which
Diane.
always wondered if you would ever see Diane.
Yeah.
So we saw her last episode.
Played by Laura Dern.
Yeah, this episode, she's a full-blown character now. Like, she has a personality.
Has multiple lines of dialogue.
I'm loving Diane. It's like you always liked her just because, she had a strong relationship with Coop. Just from him.
Or theoretically, if she was a real person. But.
Yes. I'm loving her character. Like she is, it's Laura Dern, so you're able to give her anything, and she can make it interesting. But it's hard to imagine, like, with all the, especially female characters that you love so much from the original series, them thinking they were going to introduce some other females in this season, and you would like them pretty much just as much.
Yeah.
That would seem hard, like, I don't know, but, like, between her and Janie, like, those are some great female characters that I really love. And two, it's two of, like, two of my favorite actresses, really.
Yeah, well, you get, too, like, so when all the preseason stuff was, before the season started, they were showing the different pictures, and they had like the one picture that had like David Lynch and Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern in a car, and a lot of people before the season started had prognosticated that Diane would be in the show as portrayed by Laura Dern, and since she's one that works with David Lynch so often, you would think that she would get a sizable chunk of something to do, so it all made sense. And then I know before, there was also people that were speculating that Michael Cera would be the son of Andy and Lucy, and then that turned out to be true as well.
They probably didn't expect
that
type of character, that specific interpretation.
For him to be called Wally Brando. Now, there could have been people, too, that were on set for some of this stuff that were kind of leaking stuff out.
Yeah.
But, too, also, like, Laura Dern as Diane makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So, this episode, there's been more stuff that's happening, and this episode had more callbacks to the original seasons than some of the others.
I couldn't believe it. Like, when we were watching it, probably 15, 20 minutes in, I'm like, man, they were going hard on the Twin Peaks. Like, this is so much being unpacked from the previous 2 seasons in this one episode.
Yeah, because
not just counting the stuff they've led up to so far. Yeah,
because you see the pages that Hawk found in the restroom in the stall door were pages from Laura Palmer's secret diary that were at Harold's house that they found. So those pages that are missing, and it includes Laura's description of her dream that you see in Firewalk with Me, where Annie comes to her and tells her about the bad Coop and the good Coop is stuck in the lodge and stuff like that.
And some people were like, well, how did she write it in if it happened later on?
Yeah.
But it's like, that dream could have happened a week before. You know what I mean? That dream could have happened at any point. It necessarily didn't have to happen at the end of Firewalk with Me, when she was dying or whatever. Yeah. It could have happened a week before or something.
And 2, there's the elements with the lodges we'll get into a little bit where it could shift time and have people show up at, different timing and traverse space and time and the continuum, and it could be a dimensional thing. And because like the book, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, approaches a lot of the stuff kind of like UFO investigations or aliens, but then it's also kind of like, well, it could just be extra dimensional and we don't really understand it, so you just say it's alien. So there's stuff like that. And then this episode touches on some more stuff that was in The Secret History of Twin Peaks. Like, just trying to go through things somewhat in order. So we have like the pages of the diary with Hawk laying those out, and then Sheriff Frank Truman calls Harry Truman and you find out he has some bad news, and he's fighting something. So it didn't really say specifically what it is, and it's not good, but it's probably some disease or cancer or something like that. And it's just because I think it's all just due to the fact that Michael Ontkean, who played Harry Truman, didn't want to be on the show. Yeah. Or he kind of retired from acting.
It's great that they've kind of looped him into the series.
They didn't just ignore the character. They found something to do.
And also my hope is that before he passes away, he finds out that they found Coop and Coop's back. You know what I mean? I hope he gets some sort of closure.
Yeah, because they were BFFs.
Yeah. That was the duo right there. So does the episode start with them? No, the episode starts with Jerry in the woods. Lost in the woods.
Yeah, and he calls Ben Horn and tells him that his car's missing, which could also be a reference to Dougie's car is missing.
Yeah.
Or it could just be a coincidence that he's talking about his car being stolen or missing, and there's a part later in the episode that has to deal with Dougie's car.
Or what I'm thinking too is Richard Horn. He could have stolen that car after the truck. After he hit the kid with the truck, he could have ditched that. So and I guess it belongs to the other guy that Andy is interviewing in the episode.
Yeah.
But so he could have ditched that and taken his car possibly.
Yeah.
Because he did kind of drive into the woods a little bit whenever he had the truck and was cleaning it off. It wasn't in the woods, but you could tell he drove to the edge of them.
Yeah. So you don't know exactly what all is going on.
So yeah, the pages. That was great. That's kind of, it was almost a surprising amount of clarification.
Yeah.
When he's like, okay, this happened like this, had to be Leland.
Yeah.
And he came in for questioning before about Jacques Renault, I think, or something.
Yeah.
He probably hit him. All that stuff is speculation, what people assumed may have happened, one of the theories. But it's great for him to just say it because we don't need to worry about that anymore.
Well, and two just lays out Leland killed Jacques Renault, and then the diary pages when she said she knew who it was, that meant that Laura knew it was Leland Palmer, her father. So there's a lot of stuff. So that called back to Fire Walk with Me in the original series. And the Secret Diaries, there's all this stuff that it ties into the original show, and they explicitly state it.
And they want you to know, hey, we aren't retconning anything or getting anything confused. This is the order of events. Let's put that to bed because that's actually not that important. You know what I mean? What's important is that now they have the information that the good Coop is stuck in the lodge and the bad Coop came out.
And then too, so you have where Sheriff Truman Skypes with Doc Hayward.
He hits his wooden lever.
Yeah.
With his
so he has this badass desk with an LCD monitor recessed into it, that's motorized.
I can't wait to see the first Twin Peaks fan that builds that because there's going to be somebody.
In reality, having just taken ergonomics training at my work, not the best ergonomic layout.
Oh yeah, because it was the monitor was down here.
It needs to be up higher, but still cool. I would love to have something like that here at my house.
So he talks to Doc Hayward and asks him about the night that Cooper came back.
Yeah, so he talks about that.
And he said he explicitly remembers that.
And he was acting weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then he states that in the hospital that he saw Coop leaving the ICU. And he thought he might have been going to see Audrey, but he had a weird face. So I'm guessing that could be a reference to the Bob possession of the evil Coop.
And he says that Audrey was in a coma.
And she was in a coma, which is in the Secret History of Twin Peaks. It revealed that she lived. So in the show, because he said she was in a coma, he didn't say she was still in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume we'll see her at some point. Yeah. But just 7 episodes in, you haven't seen Audrey. That's but we haven't seen a lot of Twin Peaks aside from Hawk and the sheriff's department so far, and a few things here and there. But how all that, when we'll see Audrey again, what role she'll have is yet to be seen.
Yeah.
But
and Doc Hayward too, he passed away. I think after it premiered in Cannes, maybe.
Yeah, because it's Warren Frost is the actor who is Mark Frost's father. So, and he was also a number of Twin Peaks alums showed up on Seinfeld after the original series, but so you have him explain that, and then Frank Truman was going to call his brother, but he couldn't really talk to him because he was sick. Mm-hmm. So you figure there'll be some resolution to that, or it'll come back around later.
And it started to be frustrating almost because he's oh, he's sick. I'll just talk to you later. It can wait.
Yeah.
And you almost thought they were going to pull that thing where he was going to pass away and they would have never known. And you thought, oh, but he goes right away to Doc Hayward and gets the information he needs. Like he has what he needs there, which is great that they didn't like pull a cheap trick really.
Yeah.
And you know, the typical like narrative thing that just pulls you along for no reason really. Yeah. I appreciated that. And so in between that's when Andy, I think, is going to question that guy about his vehicle, I guess. And that guy is very nervous and he's like, please just leave, I'll meet you. Andy agrees and he goes out into the middle of the woods. He waits there and looks at his Rolex until like 5:10 or something. Yeah,
because there's a lot of people that may mention the fact that Andy has a Rolex and he's acting a little bit more authoritative or a little bit less aloof than he did before in the original show to some extent. So there's people who are saying like, if Andy's dealing drugs, I'll kill myself.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, like some people that I don't want to call them simple, but some people maybe that don't live frivolously and don't drive expensive cars, you know, that have a steady job. Sometimes they have their things they like and they're like, oh, I'm going to spend a little bit on me for that. Yeah. You know, he could just really have always wanted a Rolex watch and got a watch.
It could just be a gift from Dick Tremaine for being the father of the child or something. Yeah. I mean, who knows?
Or Rolex could have thrown some money at the show.
Yeah. They're like, make sure you... I don't see David Lynch
as like, I want Andy to wear this.
I don't see David Lynch as a product placement
No,
person.
But yeah, I mean, who knows what that means? But even though he was authoritative, like they talked about the one person, the kid that I think had OD'd in an early episode or something. It didn't seem like it was related to anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, Andy says, I question him. It sounds like he's able to kind of take the lead more now anyway. So I don't feel like that's out of character too much.
Well, he also has more experience at this point.
Yes,
because it's been, you know, how many years later. But so you have like that stuff and then, you know.
And it goes back to the shot of the door. And you assume he's dead or something because it's a very creepy, slow push-in, lingering shot.
Then he never meets up with Andy later.
So he's probably killed by Richard Horn.
Yeah, or somebody, or that guy Red, or something with the drug trade, or one of the other detectives like Chad or something.
That could have been it. Yeah, it could have been Chad, and maybe he... who knows?
So there's all kinds of stuff going on with the police department having corruption in it, possibly. And then you get... the thing everybody wanted to see, which was Diane going to meet with the evil Coop. That was after initially Albert goes and tells Gordon that she doesn't want to.
Because the Gordon Cole and the Albert exchange in the apartment was phenomenal. Yeah. Like, she is like a firecracker. Yeah. And Gordon's like, well, if we're going to do this, you're going to need an attitude adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah, so they go to...
That is like... I mean, that's one of my favorite scenes of... Yeah, I mean, anything with her so far has just been a phenomenal scene in this season.
Because Albert tells Gordon that she doesn't want to do it, so then they both go to talk to her.
Too. He says, Albert says something like, you say please and I'll go with you. And Gordon says, what? He's like, you heard me. He's like, please.
So then when they get to her house, like her beau is there and leaving. Mm-hmm. And then they have the conversation. And Gordon talks about how he stopped smoking. Yeah. Which is interesting to watch the show now because like some people have been doing comparisons of like how many characters smoke in the new show versus the old show. Because the old one was in the early 90s versus current day or more current day or, 25 years later. And how David Lynch still smokes, but like a lot of TV stuff now doesn't show as many characters smoking. So there's some people who are like paying attention to those types of details. Mm-hmm. And you see more and more characters on the show smoking.
And really with the mystery, like almost film noir roots of, the type of mystery, smoking is very much part of that genre.
You have like the atmospherics and the interactions with characters.
Diane seemed like, her styling is very striking and awesome. Yeah. But at the same time, it's almost like a modern update to somebody you would see walk into a detective's office in a film noir. You know what I mean? Like you could see her walking in and being the person needing help or something like that.
So a lot of stuff like that. So then you get to one of the main events of the show so far was Diane meeting the evil Coop in prison, and she goes in to question him, and she says, she controls it. She controls the curtain, she controls the mic, and it's just her in the room. And then when she sees the evil Cooper, she asks him when the last time that they saw each other was. And he's like being like the semblance of politeness or just being civil. and he says at her house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says like he wouldn't forget, or he hasn't forgot about it, or wouldn't forget about it. And then she says something similar too, indicating some sort of trauma. And then like before she closes the curtain or the shade, she's like, "Who are you?" So then
she's visibly shaken. Like there's a lot going on in that scene, even without always being spoken. I mean, she has a lot of lines, but there's a lot happening there, and after the fact too, when she's talking to.
So there's a lot of people that think that the conversation between them indicates that after the evil Cooper got out of the lodge, that he assaulted or hurt Diane in some way, possibly sexually assaulted her or something else of that nature. Because then there's also the implication from what Doc Hayward said about evil Cooper leaving the ICU where Audrey was, and the fact that there is a new horn that's out and about.
That seems very evil.
That could have been, like, evil Cooper could have impregnated Audrey while she was in a coma. And Richard Horn is the offspring of evil Cooper and Audrey, and kept the Horn name because they didn't know who the father was. Because if she's in a coma, she wouldn't have known that happened. So there's some pretty sinister implications of the conversation between Cooper and Diane, or evil Cooper and Diane, and then what Doc Hayward had to say. So he could have sexually assaulted multiple people, in addition to, like, earlier in this season, like, killing the young woman. There's a lot of people say when he was in the hotel room and he killed the young woman, that was the way he grabbed her was very similar to how Richard Horn grabbed the girl at the Roadhouse, at the bar. So that there's people thinking that maybe that Richard Horn is kind of like the evil little shit that he is because of being the offspring of evil Cooper. So there's some pretty sinister stuff going on there. And then after Diane leaves the room, Gordon, talks to her. So the kind of indication like, no, it's not Cooper.
Yeah.
That's not who it is. And then when he asks her what happened, she says, she'll tell him at some other point. So, like, that's a story they might not ever come back to, just implicated what it meant to her.
Yeah. And at first I was a little confused, like I was telling you earlier, that I thought, okay, maybe Cooper left her, hanging, and it was like they had a relationship or something. Yeah. And then he split because he went into the lodge, and then she thought he just went out on him. But yeah, it seems like they're insinuating that this happened after he went, like right before he went missing or whatever, after he left Twin Peaks.
Because in the rest of the show, in season 1 and 2, he was having the recorded tapes he was giving to Diane. So it seemed like pretty cordial, genial communications. So, like, the only other thing I could think of is, like, between them, there was some, like, emotional moment that was, like, a bad thing, possibly. Not, like, sexual assault or anything, just, like, maybe it was, like, she was, like, Audrey Horn, and that she had kind of, like, unrequited love for him, and he said no. Like, that could have maybe been what it was, so that's why she asked. But the fact that evil Cooper knew what it was would indicate to me that it happened after the end of season 2, after he was out of the lodge.
Yeah, but also, too, like, he knows a lot of things Cooper knows. Because he knows...
Well, yeah.
Albert and Gordon Cole and all that. Like, he knows a little bit there.
So there's, like, how much of it memory is...
But I think you're absolutely right. I think it happened... I think it probably was evil Cooper.
Well, I think the implication lended it more to be more that he was doing stuff after getting out of the lodge.
He was ruining Cooper's good name that he spent all those years building up.
Yeah. Yeah, so you had that aspect, which is something people waiting for a long time. And then, after that, then you have evil Cooper wanting to talk to the warden. And then he sets, like, his plan into motion where he talks about Mr. Strawberry again, and, like, there's dog legs, and how they found the one dog leg in his vehicle, but there's other dog legs out there, and the thing that he was thinking about at that time. So basically,
said the information went out with the dog leg, the other 3 dog legs or something.
Yeah, so he's implicating to the warden that he has physical evidence that relates to something the warden was involved in that he knows about, so the warden needs to comply or else that information will come forward. Mm-hmm. Which, like, it is interesting. It is a trope in a lot of things, like, where people, like, in, like, positions of power, like the warden or something, have, like, blackmail, like, things you can blackmail him with. But, I mean, so then, too, the idea was evil Cooper being in prison, because when he gets out, he gets his friend Ray to come with him in a car to go do other things. So was the plan of evil Cooper to go to prison to get that guy Ray out? Or was it just he ended up in prison, and then when Diane came and kind of outed to Gordon and Albert that it wasn't Cooper, that he needed to get out of there before anything else happened? So I think it's probably more of the latter.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because when he like crashed his car or whatever as a result of Cooper coming into the real world and taking over Dougie, and then he vomited up the stuff. Like, I think that was not his plan.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, so... And he was like, when he was driving the car before he vomited the stuff out, you could see like the kind of stuff from the lodge or the waiting room for the lodges. So you have all this stuff going on like that. So you have, you know, evil Cooper back out in the world. The Air Force, the woman from the Air Force who's going to investigate the body, when she got there, as indicated that was the body of Major Briggs.
Again, another unanswered thing that seems pretty sure that's exactly what's happening now.
Yeah, so before we had thought that it was the body of Major Briggs, but when she gets there, they say they got the fingerprints from the body, and so she thinks that it's him, and is missing the head, which would lend credence to, like, I think it was episode 3 where Cooper saw the disembodied head of Major Briggs float by and say Blue Rose. So that would be a hint that his head was not on his body, and that is his body, but then they say that the body looks to be in its late 40s and died within like a relatively recent amount of time, when Agent Briggs should have been in his early 70s at that point in time. So, and two, he went missing, or he was presumed dead in a fire after evil Cooper got from the lodge, right before he went missing, before Cooper went missing, or fell off everyone's radar. So there's likely something going on with Briggs and the lodges and some of the tests they may have been doing with the different...
Somebody said maybe the White Lodge, you don't age.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a benefit of it versus the Black Lodge or something.
Yeah, so it's unknown exactly what happened.
It's an awesome way to, again, bring that character in there since he has passed away.
Yeah.
But, you know, also thinking about, too, it's a little weird, like that was your dad or something. Yeah. And it's like, oh, they put him back in the show, and he's a naked, headless body throughout the court. You know what I mean? That's a little weird. That would be a little weird to watch, I think. Yeah. My naked, you know what I mean? But
here's the disembodied corpse of...
But I'm sure Major Briggs would be happy to know that he is still part of this story. Even as, you know what I mean? He's an actor.
He was like a pretty big part of the show to begin with because of his connection to the Project Blue Book stuff and all the lodge connections and things like that. And then after, so then the female or the woman from the Air Force calls back the character played by Ernie Hudson and kind of confirms that it's Major Briggs and like the age discrepancy and stuff like that. And then...
And again, like another awesome revelation that something weird is happening. We're finding out what that is. Like, this episode was a series of a lot of answers, really. So, I mean, there's stuff to speculate on. Yeah. But all these episodes prior have been a lot of, like, speculating.
You're getting and information.
And now it's, like, unpacking a lot of that stuff. Yeah. It's almost like the end of a season episode. Yeah. Because so much stuff has happened.
And then you see the kind of black, ghoulish... silhouetted man that kind of looks like the Babadook a little. That's in the background, creepily coming towards the one from the Air Force when she's on the phone. So you have to think that all the stuff with Major Briggs and all that's going to tie into the Bill Hastings stuff, the Matthew Lillard character. So all that has to start coming back into play at some point soon. Especially the fact that was it Hastings' wife was shot and killed by evil Cooper at her house. So all that stuff is going to have to start bringing the South Dakota stuff into the Vegas stuff, into the Twin Peaks stuff. It's like all that's going to have to come full circle at some point, you would think. And just like the way we've seen information doled out so far, the show has not adhered to the standard script writing norms for series.
No.
It doesn't have like the A plot start at this many minutes into the episode, the B plot start so many minutes in, the weaving of all the stories together, and then like the different plot beats happening at different moment markers in the episode, because a lot of TV shows work that way, where it's a very formulaic thing that happens. This is not doing that at all. Just stuff works whatever pace it works at. I mean, this episode has a 3-minute section of someone sweeping a floor. So
it's Lynch being Lynch, and kind of when they seem like when they're about to shoot a scene, if suddenly the mood strikes him to do something totally different, he does it.
Well, and two, you have the element of just doing whatever he wants, but at the same time, there's actually information being given out in this show. It's not just a bunch of like metaphorical answers where you're supposed to search for stuff. There's still a lot of unanswered questions and metaphorical type things, but it's not like something like Inland Empire where it's all interpretation. or something even more like Mulholland Drive or some of his other movies like Lost Highway, where there's more things to interpret. There's a little bit more text to this stuff and a little bit more straightforward nature to some of the story elements. So I still want to know what like the black kind of ghoulish guy is, like what that has to do with
He may have been
anything.
in that diner at the top of the diner in Firewalk with Me also, as people keep pointing out.
Yeah, one of the the group of people that are like the guy with the weird nose thing. And...
So I think at this point, after those events, I mean, those weren't in exact order, but a general order. I think then we get back to Dougie, and which is like, so I feel like this is the longest we've not seen Dougie in an episode so far.
Yeah, we go quite a bit into the episode before you see Dougie show up. And you see him at work, and he's just scraping on his desk and paper and doing his thing, while the Tom Sizemore character, Anthony's in the room, like, trying to get the information out of what he said to the boss, because he's a little bit nervous now, because Dougie called him a liar, and then gave a bunch of paperwork to the boss, so he's concerned as to what that is, and then the somebody that works in the building comes and says the cops are there to see him. So then immediately Anthony just gets out of the room. He's like, oh, okay, I gotta go.
He's like, actually, I gotta take care of something, yeah.
So you have him leave, and the cops come in, and it's three brothers, and one of them is David Koechner, who's been on stuff like Anchorman and The Office, and he was in the movie Krampus, a bunch of stuff. So you see the cops come in, they're talking about his car, and they found his car with dead bodies around it, and it was blown up. And Janie gets there, too, at the time. It's like, what are you asking my husband about?
Yeah, she doesn't
very authoritative.
Yeah, they don't give the information right away, so they're asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And she's kind of taking the charge and answering a lot because Dougie's just repeating stuff back and forth.
Yeah, he's not revealing any new information, really.
Yeah, and again, another great scene with Janie because she's, I don't know, I love the way they wrote her character because she's a strong, I mean, she's very likable. I mean, some people could see her as, pushy or whatever, but it's like she gets stuff done, you know what I mean?
And she takes care of the police and gets all information, and then like his boss comes in too at some point. They basically just let him know that his car was found but it was blown up, and then
connected to a car thief.
Connected to car thieves. So then Jane's like, well, there you go.
Yeah, she's like, well, there's your answer. That's all the car's missing.
So then you have that, and then Janie and Dougie are leaving. And Ike the Spike comes up with a gun, and Cooper immediately goes into trained FBI mode and easily takes down Ike the Spike and has his hand. And then he sees the tree with the brainstem and the mouth on it, the evolved version of the arm, and it's telling him to pull his hand off or his arm off or something.
Yeah, something about the hand.
So you see him like squeeze on his hand to get the gun away from him, and then Ike the Spike runs away after he is disarmed.
And Janie, I think, is hitting on him a little bit.
On too.
She's screaming. She says something to him, I believe, which is
very
Dougie,
comical. Like chops him in the neck
multiple times. Yeah.
I kept thinking judo chop, judo chop. But then when the police are bagging the gun, you see there's something on it, which could be like skin from his hand.
Somebody mentioned it was this similar skin to, I think, in the trunk of Doppelkoop's car when the police find it. With the dog leg, I think somebody said something along the lines of it matched the skin to that. So they either it was that or the Briggs's body. I can't remember. I should have looked that up. But and also too, it has a tattoo on it apparently. Yeah. So there's some strong identification marks. Let me see here. Let's see.
And then too, one of the least Twin Peaks-ish moments of the entire show when they do like all the interviews of the bystanders. And the one woman's like, that man was no victim, Dougie Jones, he was like a cobra or something. So you had like a very, like, it's interesting to see David Lynch's style evolve because, a lot of the original show was shot on film. Then he made most of his movies on film in like the 90s and like the early 2000s. And then Inland Empire was shot on video, but it was DV video, which was vastly inferior to the current like HD or not even HD 4K technology or stuff like the Arri Alexas or Reds. So it's just funny seeing him like these modern tools shooting stuff that compared to like his last movie is Inland Empire. He's in like music videos and been on the show Louie and done stuff, but it's just interesting to see him using modern tools for all these things.
They also mentioned somebody said that he smelled funny. Ike the Spike.
Yeah,
and somebody people were talking about maybe it's it smelled like burnt oil possibly or something from the Black Lodge, or if he smelled like burnt oil, I don't know. So he very much seems like he could have been a fabrication, which we talked about that on the last episode. But also too, like Dougie, and Janie, they're being interviewed, and Janie's talking about, Dougie taking him down, and she's like, we wailed on him and all this stuff, but he very well could be identified now. It's going to be on the news, granted, probably only local market because nobody got killed.
But it's going to put his face out there for all people coming after him to make it even more well known.
So I'm very interested to see if that actually leads to anything. You would assume it would.
Yeah. Well, and then so you had the Dougie stuff, and then you also get the stuff where Ben Horn, and so the character played by Ashley Judd appears again, and they got the key in the mail that Jade, the hooker that was with Dougie earlier, left. When she found the key in her car, she put it in the mailbox. So got mailbox to the Great Northern. Ashley Judd brings it to Ben Horn, who they have like a weird kind of flirtation thing going.
At first, they're listening for the hum, I think.
They're listening for a hum of one of like a lamp or just in the wall.
Yeah, they're going from room to room, side to side, and they're like, it's not there, it's not there. And then all of a sudden, she's like, oh, maybe this is of interest. And she pulls up the key. Yeah,
so she has the key, and then Ben Horn recognizes it as the key to Dale Cooper's room, because in that room, Dale was shot, and an FBI agent goes missing after something like the Wyndham Earl stuff and all that. It's going to be news. So he recognizes that's what it is, and he puts the key in his pocket. You don't really see exactly what he's going to do with it.
And they also probably figure that it was from that long ago because, like you said, we went to like keyless entry 20 years ago or something. Yeah,
because they said, so like, which is true. I think hotels with most the key card entries around that time. So then after that, then we also get Ashley Judd going home to where like her husband is sick.
Assume her husband.
We assume her husband, a significant other, somebody she lives with who would be jealous or concerned about what she's doing or where she was at. And you see that relationship some,
Oh, and also too, the walls, Josie Packard went into the wood or whatever. Yeah. But it seemed more likely that it almost might be something with Audrey maybe behind the walls or something because she was always behind there. Yeah,
she was behind the walls. And then you also have the element too of like Cooper had like the giant come to him when he's in his hotel room, and there's different things. So
did the giant mention the number? Was it 430?
I don't remember what the number was. It was 4 something.
So I saw somebody else bring up that, that's like the location or whatever, because all the numbers are like essentially gateways or whatever, I think, to the lodges. But somebody brought up that that's the same birthday also as Marlon Brando and Wally Brando, of course, as well. Yeah. Are you finding that information?
I was trying to look it up.
You can also look up Marlon Brando's birthday. So she goes to see her. She goes home to who we assume is her husband. And it's not a name we heard before or anything like that. I was trying to look because I was like,
let's see, it was 4:30.
4:30, okay. Yeah. At first I was like, is that somebody from the previous series that is older now? But it seems like somebody totally new, both of them. It was also pointed out that, some of the women in the show often seem like nagging and annoying. Yeah. Like at first Truman's wife seemed like that, but then you found out she had lost her son. Yeah. And now, but this is like a role reversal on that, where Ashley Judd's character is the one kind of like feeling oppressed and maybe is getting a reason to kind of get out there or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's hard to say where that's going to lead. But
so we know that Ben Horn was a horn dog back in the original
but he kind
series.
of wasn't being he wasn't being that forward with it.
He seemed less nefarious in these episodes than the original series. And two, like, he wasn't Civil War reenactment crazy anymore. Yeah. So the clues that the giant had for Cooper were 4:30, Richard and Linda, 2 birds with 1 stone. So there was those clues.
So somebody said, Richard Horn?
Yeah, so I mean, who knows like exactly what that refers to? The 2 birds with 1 stone.
4:30. Yeah, it could be a location, but if it's Wally Brando's birthday, it's Wally Brando, Richard Horn, something to do with children. Yeah. Linda, I don't know.
Yeah, so then we...
Amanda Seyfried played Linda Lovelace in that movie, so there you go.
Becky,
yeah,
who we haven't seen since her original appearance. So then we get to see the Great Northern again. We also go back to the Roadhouse and have a scene where it's like 2 minutes of sweeping, and we see the same actor that played Jock Renault is in this episode, and you find out that he is running a prostitution ring, or setting up prostitutes, because he's talking about like underage prostitutes. They're straight A hookers or something.
Straight A whores, I think he said. Yeah,
so
he seems just as slimy as you would expect.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's easy to see how possibly some of the other previous plot points from the other series are going to converge with the drug running. If Becky's character is in any way gets pulled into that prostitution ring, you know what I mean, for drug money or whatever, because she is borrowing money from Shelley.
A difference is like she's married to her boyfriend's character, or to the other guy, the Steve character. So it's a little bit different relationship than Laura had, because she was a little bit younger, was in high school. But you have like all these elements that we don't know exactly where it's going. But like I think everybody was probably assuming that when there's all the sweeping going on at the Roadhouse or the Bang Bang Bar, that you're going to see the credits start rolling.
Yeah.
But then it just kept going, and then you get the phone call with, was it John Michel Renault? Is that what his name is?
Yeah, I think so. Somebody else brought up the point. I thought a couple people did, which was kind of a great observation, is that, you know, after so many things are happening in this episode, then we do spend like, I don't know, seemingly a few minutes or a minute or two them sweeping up the floor.
Yeah.
And it's basically like so much stuff has happened. Now it's time to kind of sit back and think about them. And it's all the pieces being swept together. Yeah. Like basically it's a lot of things being answered and kind of tidied up.
Yeah.
Because now we've answered a lot of things, and either now maybe the next episode is just going to stop giving us answers and start asking more questions, or we're going to start asking some other questions that we have maybe forgot about, or that have been asked in the beginning of this series. So I mean I like that scene, but you know, on rewatches, you know, you're kind of going to be like, okay, just
well, you're trying to figure out what's going on,
yeah,
and where it's going. So then we're back there. We know that there's prostitution going on again. So situations, it could be like One-Eyed Jack from the original series, just like different location. And you talk about like the Renault family's owned like the bar for so many years, and all these different things. Yeah. So you have that type of stuff.
So after that, that's when we go to the prison when Doppelkoop gets out.
Yeah.
They basically they get a cheap rental car, I think, and then a gift in the glove box. And then they go out and the warden watches them basically just leave. And that's basically the last we see of him in the episode. And then we go back to the double R at the end.
Yeah, and somebody comes through and asks about Bing.
Yeah, where's Bing? Anybody seen Bing, or where's Bing or something?
And then runs out, and then the episode ends in the diner.
Yeah, and the person that asked it was Riley Lynch.
Yeah.
Who, you know, played a guitarist or something in one of the performances. That could be nothing that he was playing that. He could be looking for his drummer. We don't know.
Yeah, because it could just be like a non sequitur. That's just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah,
but with the show so far, that hasn't, like, most times stuff's went places.
And did we know who the person that owned that truck that Andy was going to be questioning?
No,
I'm sure it's probably in the credits what his name was.
Yeah,
and I meant to look that up.
But it didn't come back, or it didn't have any significance really to the other major players, I think.
Yeah, I just didn't know if his name was Bing.
Yeah,
that's the only reason why I thought about that. I meant to kind of look that up, but I didn't see anybody bring that up in any discussion, so I assumed that wasn't. I was kind of reading the credits as it was going.
Yeah,
but didn't see that stand out.
You saw Norma and Shelley in the diner and double R diner.
And I guess is she Swedish? Did she come when the Swedes came? The giggly waitress?
She was in the pilot episode, because I rewatched part of that earlier. So
and she's in Firewalk with Me and another episode, I think, too. So she's kind of featured predominantly there. And somebody said it might be the back of Bobby Briggs' head also. And then somebody in the distance almost looks like Audrey.
Yeah.
But after he leaves, then I didn't notice it until people pointed out that a lot of the people at the restaurant change. Like, you know, two people, all of a sudden this crowd is gone and there's other people here. these guys on the left side kind of stay the same, but then you just kind of watch this scene play out like you would, with some great music that seems very appropriate of that diner. Like if you were to go on that diner on the road, it sounds like it would be in there. There was some great music in this episode too. There was a lot of, the classic Twin Peaks theme.
You heard the theme.
Twin Peaks theme. It's
the score.
Laura Palmer's theme, I think, played a little bit.
Because I heard you heard some of the original music mixed in, and some of the episodes earlier didn't have much music or had like popular music like filtered in. You had like the music in the Roadhouse this episode, so David Lynch is changing up and not just ending every episode on a performance at the Roadhouse, which you were kind of expecting to happen. So I think this episode had a lot of forward momentum and started, advancing on the storylines, and then kind of went against expectations with the scene of the sweeping stuff, just to kind of bring you back down, and then gave you...
It made me getting you ready for the next episode if they go back to the pace of the earlier ones.
Gave you like a kind of a non sequitur at the end of like a character running in asking where Bing is, and then you see the diner. So
we spent a lot of time in Twin Peaks in this episode. So
I think we're going to continue. Early on, I thought that they would start bringing stuff back to Twin Peaks, because you have like the investigation with like Hawk and Sheriff Truman going on and all that stuff, and the stuff with Richard Horn and Red and all that, and Harry Dean Stanton's character, and like all these different things start coming back together. You're going to have to see all of it all fits together, and you still have Dougie, Coop, and Las Vegas.
And again, more of him seems to be coming back after he had his reflex. I almost thought that could have been a traumatic event that would have snapped him out of it.
Because for a second, like after it was over, he kind of looked around. And I was like, "Oh, is it Cooper?"
Yes.
But then he was just like, "No."
Yeah.
And he tried to touch the badges again and stuff. So,
I mean, I saw a lot of people like really wanting Cooper to return for this episode, but so much stuff happened. Like the fact that we got Diane, and a proper amount of Diane, and not just to look at her. Like that was enough to kind of define this episode, among other things that made it like a huge episode in the context of Twin Peaks as a whole series. Like this was a monumental episode, the reveal of Diane, basically.
And then you brought back in stuff from Laura Palmer's like secret diary.
Just the diary pages was like...
So you're bringing back in this, because the original show was supposed to have never identified who Laura's killer was, and then the network made David Lynch do that, or made the show writers and runners, everybody do that. So you're bringing back in the Laura Palmer stuff, which is what the show started based on to begin with. And, then it delved into the lodges and all the backstory and the seedy underbelly of, like, this idyllic town that was kind of modeled after, like, the 50s, but...
We have one page still missing.
Yes.
And I've heard people say... Have you read this, that, there's a possibility for a next season?
I've heard people say that, but I also, like, don't know that... Because I think, like, Mark Frost's been like, well, we could probably do something... But I think that, like, from what I gathered, I thought David Lynch kind of approached this as, like, this is a thing and it's done.
It kind of should be, because it took this long to get done.
Because I think they're making another... I think Mark Frost is writing another book.
Yes, that's supposed to release in the fall, right? Like November or something like that.
Like after the show.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. But, like, in terms of another season, like, I would love to get it. I just don't know that that'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very risky, too. I mean, I don't want to say risky, but just because this has been such a special thing and it's so different from the other ones. If you drag this out another 10 episodes or whatever, next year or next 2 years, like, it won't be as special.
Like, I would hope that this is like a self-contained story. And I'm sure there'll still be plot elements out there that you could, tackle down the road and do something with its original. But, like, I would hope that the story of, like, Cooper and all the characters we've seen kind of comes to a conclusion. And then, like, if they wanted to dive into the realm and do more stuff, you could.
Yeah, it's just like you've got all these characters together, and it seems like it was probably a feat. I mean, granted, I know a lot of them aren't, like,
you had, like,
working, like, all the time and super busy. Not all of them are, but just the fact that they were able to get all these people back involved.
So you had, like, Miguel Ferrer, that was Albert, who passed away.
Exactly.
You had, just in this episode, you had Doc Hayward, which is Warren Frost, who passed away. So you have, and then, like, the Log Lady Margaret, like, the actress play her passed away. So there's all these characters that you couldn't bring back at all. If you were to do anything else, I think.
But granted, they have been introducing a lot of interesting characters. The reason I brought that up, until we were talking before, I was like, I would rather them do something new. I'd rather them work on a new show for Showtime, build it for that. Mark Frost and David Lynch, and hell, use all the same actors. You know what I mean? Like, that would be fine. I would be fine with that. But I don't want to leave any more loose ends after it took this long to get to.
You don't want to get a cliffhanger for something you waited 26 years for.
Yeah, and I'm fine if they don't answer all the questions. I don't expect everything to be answered.
Well, it's David Lynch. You can't really expect.
Yeah,
that,
I just don't want them to.
I hope there's some narrative closure for some of the major elements.
Yeah, I don't want them, and I don't think they'll try to stretch it for no good reason. But the reason I brought that up is if there is another page missing. You could see that being a great device for a next season, as far as they could rewrite kind of the history of events, because who's to say there's not information on there that Laura wrote when she was not even in a daze or something, or stuff she didn't realize, just like she realized that her dad, Leland was Bob, and who's to say this could be information that maybe changes the whole structure of the show, and it maybe changes things about certain characters. Like, they could do some really interesting stuff with that 4th page, and they could leave that out there and not say whatever, and you could build a whole season on that if it had a lot of revelations or something like that. But yeah, we haven't seen Laura's mom anymore either. Not that there's been a lot of reasons to, but
we still haven't seen Hank. We still haven't, or not Hank, Big Ed. Sorry, we haven't seen Hank.
We haven't seen Hank though. Yeah.
Well, if it follows the secret history of Twin Peaks, we won't be seeing him.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Which, I mean, good riddance.
Yeah, it was just kind of like a minor character. He didn't die into the larger mythology that much. But Big Ed, I hope we'll see.
Yeah.
We haven't seen James again. We haven't seen Bobby again. So there's a lot of characters I'd like to see again and see what's going on with those arcs. But there's 11 episodes left, so...
Yeah, which, I mean...
There's 7 in.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby. I just want to see all those guys. I want to see, like I said,
there's
the Bookhouse Boys get together.
And who is the parent, who is the father of Becky, the Amanda Seyfried character, Seyfried, however you pronounce her name. So there's all these loose ends out there of, information we don't quite have.
One good thing about this show, though, is that, unlike the original series, where it kind of started going out there, a lot of the plots were kind of seemingly devised just to give the characters something to do.
Well, yeah, because season 2, once they gave away who the killer, once they showed who the killer of Laura Palmer was and resolved that arc, I think that was kind of at the behest of the network. So then that kind of made them shift gears on what the remainder of the season was. And David Lynch kind of stepped away from the show after that point because they kind of made him do what he didn't want to do creatively. So then you had all those season 2 episodes with Little Nicky, and then Cooper wearing flannel, and all the side plot stuff.
Yeah.
And then Lynch came back at the end with the Wyndham Earl stuff the last couple of episodes. So this show seems like from the very beginning they had a very specific idea. They had all the scripts written before they started. There was no network meddling or audience reaction feedback that goes into the show. It was all a complete thing that they
and there's
wrote.
No B plots for the sake of B plots. You know what I mean? It seems
it's
like
more
a larger
Game of
story.
Thrones, where you're just checking in all these different stories that are all going on concurrently, and it's not just the Cooper Dougie is the A storyline, and then these other characters are the B storyline.
And they'll never really. I mean, they will intersect, but they're not. It's not a larger story on the whole. It's really not a bunch of individual stories.
It really is a 18-hour movie.
Yeah, one
versus
story.
A TV series. And the fact there's 18 episodes, that's almost network level amounts of episodes, because most shows that are dramas and stuff down on HBO, on Netflix, on Hulu and cable and all that go 10 to 13 episodes. And this is 18, so that's more than you're used to getting out of...
And 18 hours. They're not 44-minute episodes as well.
Yeah, so you're getting more content. And two, I'm not sure. I would still be interested to see if the original plan was 18 episodes. That's what it turned out being, because David Lynch didn't want to cut 3 minutes of sweeping a floor.
I thought I remember reading a news story that was supposed to be 12 or
initially
something.
It was a lower number, and then it became a larger number that could have been because of the material. Just that's what it took. Or the amount of stuff that David Lynch shot and wanted to keep.
He's like, you know what? We're going to be on this bar for 2 minutes. We're going to have to order another episode.
We need to show Dr. Jacoby spray painting shovels for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
which I love it. I'm so glad that Showtime is letting him just
do whatever he wants.
Go for it, man.
So I guess the big thing now to speculate on is, when do you think the real Cooper will appear in the show? What episode number do you think the real Cooper will be back by?
I don't know. If it's not at the very end... I don't want to see it happen 3 episodes before. If it happens at the last episode, that's fine. Then you'll kind of get closure for him being at peace on some level. But but I also don't want to be a tease and get like 2 episodes of it. Like I kind of want to get like
either it's the narrative conclusion,
8 of them.
Either like I think it's better as either the narrative conclusion to the series where he comes back, and you get like an episode or the last episode or something has that, or we get him back with like episode 10 to 11, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, you would think it would have to be
time.
pretty soon. That way you would essentially have like almost a whole other season, because this has been a lot of content so far. If you get like a good 8 episodes of him, because then you can really kind of spend some time with him again. And I hate to like wish for anything in particular, because I think they've done a phenomenal job of giving us what we didn't know we wanted.
Yeah.
But just like this episode was kind of like, you felt like they were giving you a lot of what you wanted, and it felt really good,
Yeah.
So I would be happy if we got like 8 episodes of Cooper back. But like, how did this episode compare to you to the other episodes so far?
Well, I think that like the past few, they started to get into a groove, like giving you like an idea of what the identity of the show is, and this feels more like these past few episodes, like 5, 6, and 7. It felt more like Twin Peaks than the first 4, because the first 4 had so much varying things. This new like this was a very satisfying episode that started giving you answers and introductions and character interactions like Diane and Evil Coop and stuff that you never knew you were going to see before. Like, if they never made this new season, you were just never going to ever know, one, if Diane was a real person, and although there was indication that she was, but there's just stuff you're starting to get. You're seeing old characters like Doc, Hayward, and you're seeing, Andy again and Hawk, and you're seeing all these different things, and then you have the new stuff too, like I'm digging the show. Like, I look forward to it every week, and I'm enjoying what I'm getting. I'm just looking even more towards like when all the stories start converging, because that there's got to be. But then again, they could just divert away from expectations and do something you weren't expecting, and give you a reversal and a twist on what you thought. But it seems like this is, I know like the Showtime president says like the pure heroin or crack version of David Lynch, which I think is true in some of the stuff they're doing for TV, but it's still not the unrestrained narrative jumble that some of the movies were. There is some structure to it, and we are getting some answers. So,
how does this episode rank compared to the others? Like, is this one of your favorites? Is it? I've seen a lot of people say this is the best episode so far.
I think it's one of my favorites, because I think I enjoyed this one more than the last one.
Yeah.
Because 5 was the first one where it's like, okay, here's kind of an identity for the show is going forward. And I think this was like the best execution of that, moving the storylines along and then having some kind of like creepy stuff in it. And then having, just a lot of story momentum that I didn't think we were going to get based on some of the prior episodes. So I think out of all the ones so far, this has been like an episode that was pretty good about moving the, show forward.
This one has been, it was a very satisfying episode.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing because it is very different than some of the others. Like I think the last episode I liked a whole lot as well. But it's like those are almost different things, because this is like a lazy way to describe it, but they're more like art house films that you can kind of appreciate the, I guess, exercise and experimentation and form.
Yeah.
So it's like you can appreciate those on a different level almost. But then this episode is more of a traditional story format, but it's so good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and the revelations are so good. It's almost like 2 different experiences. Like, one's almost just like a really satisfying like summer movie, almost like this episode was, and then the other ones are ones that you kind of maybe can spend more time thinking about possibly. Granted, this episode absolutely has those elements too, but I don't know what I want more of. I'm really glad we're getting both though. This was extremely satisfying in it, and as we were watching it, I told my wife, I'm like, okay, God, now that they're in this mode, like, I want 4 hours of this. I wish they were doing 4 hours tonight. So, I mean, that says something. Like, I was really enjoying it, too. Like, I really wanted them to kind of...
get some.
I was like, oh, we're going now. So, like, let's just keep going. I'm ready to
more Albert, more, Cole, and all the different
I don't want to wish the
things
show away, because I really have enjoyed watching it every week. But yeah, it really had me itching for more. And, I cannot wait for next week. And it may slow back down, and that'll be totally fine, too. But I
think there'll probably be some like narrative ebbs and flows. They like dole out information and then kind of like settle into the moment and settle into some of the plots, and then dole out information. Like, that's kind of how it's gone.
Yeah, there was an article about too, like Showtime is kind of showing Netflix like, kind of a different way to do a show, which is the classical way.
Talk that comes around, because like it used to be you had to wait every week for a show.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the 90s when Twin Peaks first came out, a lot of times people didn't watch every episode of a show because a lot of stuff wasn't heavily serialized. It was kind of just like episodic. So you could watch one episode, skip 3, and watch the next one, like on Friends or, ER, a lot of stuff. Well, ER was kind of, those shows did have serialization to them, but not to the extent that Twin Peaks did.
Yeah.
Where, you just got more and more of the story that you had to watch. So the original show created a lot of speculation around it and people watching it. And then it evolved over time to stuff like Lost, where everybody was speculating about it and talking about it, but the internet existed. And then you got to the future to where Netflix has series, they drop all 10 episodes at once or 13 at once, and then people will go through it and watch it in a weekend.
Yeah. It's Stranger Things was talked about a lot last summer.
Yeah.
And it was an explosion, and people were really into it.
And Orange is the New Black.
But it was like it's like a flash in the pan. You watch it, and you get to talk about it a lot after that too. And people do dissect it and everything.
Yeah.
But when you're kind of forced to digest it at this rate, it stays in the public eye and media. It's constantly published, just like these videos for the whole summer long.
Yeah, it's not just all out in 1 week.
It does a lot to kind of build up the awareness of the show, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say Netflix doesn't have awareness because they're like the hugest thing right now.
Yeah, just like with the narrative around some of their shows like Stranger Things, even though it's a huge hit and it's got a big second season coming up and everybody talked about it, would it have been even bigger if it was doled out like a week at a time and you had to wait a week?
Yeah.
Would it have been less of an impact if you had to wait for it and it wasn't all at once? And it's kind of unknown.
And two, the way they're doing the show and
Twin Peaks,
you have to dole it out like this because there's so much to process.
I think that David Lynch too did Showtime could have released it all at once if they wanted, but I don't think that was what David Lynch wanted. And I think what they're doing is smart because it, like you said, it keeps the water cooler conversation around it. It keeps all the internet speculation around it. And then people literally just have to be subscribed to the network
for the entire summer,
for multiple months to watch it from beginning to end. Versus if you dropped it all at once, I think that, and two, when you drop all the episodes at once, that means if you don't want to get anything spoiled at all, you have to watch it in, of course, like a weekend.
Yeah, because there'll be memes out in a week.
Somebody will inadvertently spoil it, no matter how much you try to stay away from it. So with this show, you can't.
It's great that nobody knows what's going to happen.
And
you know what I mean?
The episode titles are so obscure. It's just, or the episode descriptions are like the one line, like case files.
Yeah.
Don't die. That's a dead body, all right.
I'm really glad this didn't end up on Netflix. And, just because I like being the force to draw it out because it's just been so much fun. And there hasn't been a show that I've got into like this.
Yeah.
Like, ever because I wasn't around the original Twin Peaks, and I like Game of Thrones, and a lot of the shows I do watch on a weekly basis are comedies. Yeah, so I look forward to that.
Well, there's stuff like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and
see, I like Better Call Saul, but I'm behind on that. You know what I mean? Like I don't have the same sort of drive.
Well, too, like Twin Peaks is kind of rare in that there were 2 seasons of the original show, plus a movie, and then a 20+ year wait.
Yeah.
And so far, like, everything has been good. Like, a lot of times when you have a long delay between, like, sequels to something, they're usually terrible. So I'm thinking of Indiana Jones and the King with the Crystal Skull. Like, even stuff like the X-Files are more mixed when they came back for that 10th season. There was a few episodes that were good, few that were kind of bad. They're coming back for more, so hopefully those are good. But, like, Twin Peaks is, like, its own thing. It's nothing like the original 2 seasons for the most part. Like, it's starting to get more similar to it. And 2, it's on a Showtime versus ABC, so they can have more profanity and nudity and more.
And they can spend, a few minutes looking at a bar or whatever.
And then, like, it doesn't, like, Fire Walk with Me feels more similar to the show so far, more than the original Twin Peaks did, but it's starting to feel more like Twin Peaks as more of those original characters come in. There's comedy with Dougie and Janie and the other, and then like Wally Brandos. There's all these things that are giving it more of the feel of the original series, and it's slowly regaining that, which I think is good, because if you just try to jump in and reclaim that original feeling immediately, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So if you slowly earn it, coming from this kind of obscure, like, Cooper's in this room where there's like purple lights and someone with no eyes, and he goes through a socket. There's all these different things like that. If you build up to a show that resembles the original one, then it feels more like it than if you just jump straight in and try to take like Fuller House, like where they try to just make it feel like you turned the TV on after the last episode aired of the original show. And then this one's more of like, no, you'll get to what that show felt like eventually. Yeah. But here's a glass box.
Of any, that I can think of off the top of my head, like comeback movie or like movies have been remade or not remade, but there's been like late sequels to and
Yeah.
stuff, and TV shows. Like, this is not one that you would ever say like, oh, should have they actually done that? You know what I mean? Like, it totally feels earned, and like, yes, they should have on multiple levels. You know, it's
well,
not
like years, but like when I first watched the show when I was in college, because I watched Twin Peaks back in like 2005 or 6 or so, before they had the gold box DVD set. So that was back when if you wanted to watch it, you couldn't get the actual pilot from the series. You could find the international pilot, but not the U.S. pilot and stuff. But like I had found them online and found the full like correct order actual pilot and the rest of the show online before I had a chance to buy the physical copies of it. Because the time was like DVD. There's like I think there was like some like random DVD sets like VHS.
Mm-hmm.
I think people just transcoded the VHS to like files and had them online, so I watched it. Then I bought the show as soon as I could, the full version. But like back then when I got done watching, I was like, that's it. Like, yeah. And then I was like, well, damn it. Now like I know there were people talking about like maybe they would make a graphic novel about it or a video game at some point that would tie up the story. And like I never thought there'd be a new season of the show. So to get that at all is amazing. Mm-hmm. So
I'm excited for the rest of the season because it has been phenomenal so far.
Yep.
Alrighty, so
I think
we'll call it.
Yeah, that'll wrap up our discussion of Part 7 of Twin Peaks: The Return. So keep an eye out. We'll be talking about Episode 8 next week.